Moonrise, Chapter 14. The lights were still on in Bella's house as we drove closer and closer. Apparently her father was waiting for her to return home. Edward parked the car and sat in silence for barely 2 seconds. "He's not here," Edward stated. "Let's go." And as soon as those words were out of his mouth, we were all moving. Emmett worked Bella quickly out of her harness. "Don't worry, Bella. We'll take care of things here quickly," Emmett promised in a confident voice. "Alice, Emmett," Edward said, his voice sounding like a command. We both nodded and breezed into the trees behind the house to keep watch in case James was near. We both listened carefully, not straying far from the other, as we walked around silently. Our heads snapped up and to the right as we both heard a noise. "He's following us," I whispered as I took a step back. But Emmett had different intentions. He made a step forward and tensed. I grabbed his arm and yanked him back with me. "No, don't do that. It's too dangerous, and we don't know where the female is," I stated in a whisper as we both kept our eyes on the movement. "Come on, let's go," I said as I tugged his hand again. He followed me to the front of the house as we heard the argument slowly coming to an end between Bella and her father. Edward was standing by the trees, tensed, as his eyes scanned over the area. "Here," he muttered, and tossed me the keys to the Jeep. I caught them easily and glared at him, but dropped it as Edward glowered at me. "Just do it," he said impatiently. I just nodded and ran slowly to the Jeep. I got in and waited silently, looking out of the window at the front door. Finally, the door opened, and Bella briskly walked to her truck, got in, and started the engine. She backed out of the driveway with one last glance at Charlie, who was standing in the doorway watching her go. Once she was out of sight, I started the engine to the Jeep and followed quickly behind them. Emmett jumped into her truck, and I heard Bella scream, but it was cut off by Edward. "It's only Emmett," he reassured her quietly. We drove for what felt like forever, but we finally turned onto our driveway, and they parked the truck with me right behind them. Emmett got her out and wrapped his arms around her, running her quickly into the house, with Edward and me by their side. "He's tracking us," Edward almost growled, as his eyes locked with Laurent. "I was afraid of that," he answered with a sigh. I ignored their conversation and walked quickly over to Jasper. I looped my arm with his and looked at him. His eyes met mine immediately. "We need to hurry. We were taking Bella away for a while," I said quickly, my words blurring together, but he understood. We hurried up the stairs into our room, where I immediately grabbed a backpack and started shoving things into it. I blurred around the room, grabbing a large wad of cash, passports, and an extra pair of clothes, sunglasses, and my wallet. "Alice." Jasper called my name, bringing me back to the fact that he was still there. "Where are we going?" he asked as he came to stand next to me. "Phoenix," I answered briskly as I continued shoving things into the backpack. I grabbed a small leather bag and threw in the wallet, cash, and passports. I turned to Jasper, but he was standing there, his expression torn, his eyes confused, and no smile on his perfect face. "What, Jasper?" I asked as I walked over to him. "Why us? Why me? I don't think I could handle this, Alice," he told me. I sighed. "Jasper, really? We don't have time for this again." I practically growled, but then my eyes widened in shock at what I had done. "I'm sorry, Jasper. I trailed off as I looked up at him. "I really didn't mean that, Jazz. I can't do this, and it's not right for me to be taking it out on you," I whispered as I backed away from him. He walked toward me and wrapped his strong arms around me. "I could never be upset with you, Alice. You make that impossible. And no, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have brought that up," he murmured into my ear, kissing the bottom of my ear softly. "This is all my fault. If I had seen they were coming earlier, I could have done something about it. If I hadn't had the idea to play baseball, we wouldn't be in this situation. If I didn't have my vision, none of this would have happened," I cried, guilt eating away at me. "Hush, my love, don't say that. If it wasn't for your visions, you would never have found me. I'd be a wreck without you. And no one expects you to be perfect, Alice. So what? You mess up sometimes, everyone does. There are only 2 of them, Alice. They won't get Bella," he promised me. He kissed me fervently, but quickly, still holding me to him, though. "I would be a disaster without you, Jasper," I said with a small laugh, feeling his ability to work on my emotions. I wrapped my arms around his neck and kissed him again. "Are you sure?" I asked him, my anxiety still getting the better of me. "Positive, Alice. We need to hurry. They're ready now," he told me as he untangled himself from my embrace. I nodded and bolted into the closet, throwing on another outfit and then rushing back out. Jasper was zipping up the backpack, throwing it over his shoulder as he started for the door. I grabbed my leather bag and shrugged it over my shoulder, following behind him. I stopped at the stairs, though, and waited for Bella and Esme as Jasper rushed down. Moments later, Esme and Bella appeared, and I grabbed Bella's other arm as we carried her down the stairs to the garage. Emmett and Edward were preparing to leave, grabbing a bunch of equipment that they might need for the hunt. Carlyle handed a phone to Esme quickly, and then turned to Bella. "Esme and Rosalie will be taking your truck, Bella," he stated, and Bella gave him a timid nod as he went on. Carlyle handed me a cell phone then. "Alice, Jasper, take the Mercedes. You'll need the dark tent in the south," he continued, and Jasper and I nodded in unison. "We're taking the Jeep," he said as he glanced at Edward. "Alice," Carlyle asked, "will they take the bait?" I closed my eyes and looked into the future carefully, knowing that I had to be accurate this time. I felt the eyes of my family on me as they patiently waited for my answer. My eyes opened to meet everyone's intense gazes and nodded. "He'll track you. The woman will follow the truck. We should be able to leave after that." My voice was certain this time. "Let's go," Carlyle began as he walked toward the kitchen. Jasper and I turned slightly to give Edward his time with Bella before they had to leave. He was in the room for barely 5 seconds, and then he was gone. Tears rolled down Bella's cheeks, and the 4 of us pretended we didn't notice. Esme's phone rang, and it was at her ear. "Now," she said. Rosalie stalked out of the door without another glance in Bella's direction, but Esme touched her cheek as she passed. "Be safe." Her whisper lingered behind as they slipped out of the door. The 3 of us waited in silence. Finally, I saw that the phone would ring, so I instantly put it to my ear. "Edward says the woman is on Esme's trail. I'll get the car." I vanished into the shadows, the way Edward had gone. I hurried to the car and started the engine, quickly driving and then parking the car by the garage. I ran into the house and slowed as I neared Bella, with my arms held out. "May I?" I asked kindly. "You're the first one to ask permission." She smiled wearily. I quickly picked her up, and Jasper and I rushed her to the car, putting her in the back seat. I dashed around the other side, shutting the door behind me. Bella put on her seatbelt, and Jasper hit the gas. This was going to be a long drive. We probably wouldn't get there until late afternoon tomorrow, if we were lucky. About a 24-hour drive, with a human that smelled really good. Great. That's why Jasper was driving, to give him something to take his mind off the intoxicating smell. The hours slowly ticked by, and it was now almost 10 o'clock. Bella's head had somehow made its way to rest on my shoulder, her teary eyes staining my shirt. The highway was silent. Very few cars were on it. I gently moved Bella's head off of me and shifted her away a little. I silently crept into the passenger seat next to Jasper. I rolled down the window a little and leaned my head against it, taking a breath of fresh air. Jasper did the same, and then we closed the windows, not to wake her up. Guilt had been working its way into me during the car ride, but I was hoping that Jasper thought it was Bella. So far he had not asked me about it, so I was taking that as a yes. I looked out of the window and watched as the trees passed the car quickly. I wrapped my arms around my legs, pulling them onto the seat and resting my head on my knees. What if this ended badly? It would be all my fault, right? Edward would lose the love of his life because I wasn't paying attention. That wasn't fair. I had to stop thinking about all of this before Jasper found out that I was feeling bad. I plugged in my iPod and started humming to a random song. Leaning my head back against the headrest, I closed my eyes and tried not to think about everything for a while, but it kept coming back. Jasper turned off the radio and glanced at me. "Why are you feeling like that?" he asked. Damn it, I was caught. "Why did you turn it off?" I asked, not wanting to answer his question. "Alice," he said, his voice sounding a little stressed. "What? I asked you a question," I told him grumpily. "I asked you first," he shot back, not liking my attitude. "Tell me what is bothering you, and I will turn it back on," he said. "Okay," I mumbled. "I just want everything to turn out okay, and I just can't keep my mind off how I let that slip so easily," I murmured. "Alice, no one blames you. You were having fun just like the rest of us. It's okay that you missed one little thing. Actually, that gives me a little hope. Maybe someday I'll be able to surprise you," he said with a chuckle. "It's not funny. And no, you'll never be able to surprise me, because I always keep a close eye on you. Anything you do runs through my head, because your future is twined." I paused, taking one of his hands off the steering wheel and lacing it into mine. "With mine," I murmured. "Always." I could feel the smile on his face when he spoke. "I'll always try," he mumbled. "And you will always not succeed," I quietly laughed. He rolled his eyes at me and looked back at the road. "Hey, you still don't know what your anniversary present is yet," he said with a smirk. "Probably because you'll team up with Emmett and decide to get me something dirty this time," I said. "I still remember when you and him did that a few years ago. So not funny. And then you guys made me open the present in front of the family," I mumbled. "No, that wasn't me that decided that. I really didn't know until you opened it. And I was almost as shocked as you were," he said with a chuckle. "You're lucky you got to touch me at all that anniversary," I said with a laugh. "Yes, that was the first and last time I'll ever do that," he murmured, but then glanced at me. "Maybe one more time," he said with a wink. "Don't even try it, because you won't ever touch me again," I said as I stuck my tongue out at him. He let out a small chuckle. "You think you can do whatever you want and just get away with it, don't you?" I said with mock anger. He gave me a boyish grin and nodded. "I have no idea why I married you. I teased him lightly. Maybe because you love me, he tried with a laugh. Very much I do, I whispered as I looked up at him. That's good. I was scared for a moment, he murmured lightly, taking his hand off the steering wheel and brushing it across my cheek. I could never not love you. The mere thought is impossible, I said. Jasper turned off the highway then and pulled into a gas station. He stepped out of the car and over to the gas pump. I opened my car door and walked toward him, leaving the door open to let some of the air out. I glanced at Bella and then remembered what we had been talking about in the car. My eyes widened and I frowned. Jasper noticed this and chuckled a little. I know. I just remembered that too, he murmured sheepishly, running his hands through his hair. Well, at least she's asleep. I can drive if you want, I added as I ran my hand across his arm. No, I'm fine. It's a good distraction for me, having to focus on something else other than that, he said, glancing over at Bella. He finished up with the gas, and we got back into the car. Before Jasper drove off, he looked down at my shirt, stained by Bella's tears. Do you want to change? He asked as he saw the damp fabric. No, I'm fine. It will probably get messed up again anyway, I answered with a shrug. He nodded and pulled out of the gas station, turning back onto the highway. We sat in silence for a while. Feeling Jasper with me was enough. I looked at him and noticed his body was still. He wasn't breathing, but then again, neither was I. Neither of us wanted to take any chances. I focused on Bella's breathing, her breath coming in short, shallow breaths. Her eyes were still shedding tears, and her face seemed to be paler than usual. I sighed heavily and looked over at Jasper. How is she holding up? I asked, knowing that his analysis would be more accurate than my own. He was silent for a handful of seconds, and then exhaled. She feels very guilty, and she's really upset. She thinks this is all her fault, he murmured. But it's not, I whispered, as I looked in the mirror to study her face. And she really misses him, he breathed. And she loves him very much, he continued, with a little confusion. Of course she does. We wouldn't be going through this right now if her feelings were false, I murmured. And of course she misses him. That's a given. I would definitely miss you if we were split up for some reason, I said. He nodded, and I felt a wave of love fill my body. She is a very selfless person, he added. Yes, but I'm afraid she'll put others before herself to try to help us, I whispered. You are right. There are enough of us, though. She shouldn't have to do anything, he said confidently. I nodded, and we lapsed back into silence. The hours slowly ticked by, our long 23-hour car ride finally over as we reached Phoenix. Which way to the airport? Jasper asked Bella, who flinched slightly at the noise, but straightened up immediately. Stay on I-10. We'll drive right past it, she said in an even tone, almost emotionless. Are we going somewhere? Bella asked me. I was now sitting next to her in the black leather seat. I had switched spots, seeing that she would wake up around noon. No, but it's better to be close just in case, I told her. Bella dozed back off in a handful of minutes. We reached a nearby hotel, and Jasper pulled in. He got the 2 bags from the trunk as I pulled Bella out of the car gently. She stumbled along with me as we walked inside, and Jasper went to the front desk to check us in. I followed behind and propped Bella up a little more so it wouldn't look so much like we were kidnapping her. The man's eyes were on me before Jasper pulled his attention away, handing him a credit card. The man quickly took it and then handed it back to Jasper with a room card. Jasper smiled, and we started to walk toward the elevator. A minute later, Jasper opened the door to the hotel room. It was large, with a separate bedroom and living area. I dragged Bella inside the bedroom, sitting her down gently, and then shutting the door behind me. Jasper was sitting in the office chair. He smiled at me and beckoned for me to join him. "Yes, Jess?" I asked, as I sat down on his lap, enjoying the feeling of his arm sliding around my waist and holding me close to him. His eyes twinkled, and a bright smile broke on his lips as he looked at me. His right hand danced around my waist, and I felt a slight tug on my thin shirt. I looked at him questioningly as he continued to smile. "What are you—" I trailed off as his hand slid under my shirt, and he leaned his head against my neck. "Have you seen anything yet?" he asked, his breath moving across my skin softly, making me shiver involuntarily. I tried to search, but Jasper was distracting me, his hand moving farther and farther up my shirt. I caught a quick glimpse, but then I lost it. I can't, I stuttered, my mind becoming blurry to every subject other than Jasper. "What was that?" he asked with a chuckle that shook both of us slightly. I focused for a moment, and then inhaled. "Nothing has changed. I trailed off again as Jasper kissed my neck. "Stop it. I can't focus on anything when you do that," I said, agitated with him. He chuckled and repositioned me so I sat innocently on his lap. "I'm just kidding, Alice. I have to get rid of your tense atmosphere somehow," he murmured. I smiled at him, and he knew he was easily forgiven. This was going to be the hardest part for Jasper and myself. We had to sit back and wait while our family hunted James and the woman almost 1,000 miles away. We knew that they would be fine, but we still had our anxieties. All we had to do was look over Bella and wait.